Shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin this lesson by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well and who taught me this truth. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. And so right now I want to speak on the fact that, let me say all praises, honor, and glory is definitely due to Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Ba'asham Kakwadash for proving his word to be faithful and true. You know, as we see the prophecies are moving and we are in that time of war, man. Okay, we're seeing a lot of people speaking that we could be entering into World War III. We're already there. And it just has to heat up, you know. Right now, the earth is on fire right now as many countries are at war. Okay. And yeah, eventually it's just people are gonna take sides and start fighting against each other. You know, ultimately it's gonna come down to almost everybody fighting against Babylon the Great and these small hats, you know. And that's what it's coming down to, you know. And the Lord is stirring these people up right now to bring about this war. So matter of fact, yeah, I'll start at Joel chapter 3. And then I'm going to get some videos. It says, For behold, in those days, and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and bring them down into the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, okay, which is basically Yahweh's judgment, you know. And I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Okay, so ultimately, we're in that time where the Lord is gathering all these nations together to judge them, you know. And this judgment is bringing our captivity to an end. Okay, so where a lot of things, this war and where we are is gonna have an impact, you know, on the whole world and everything, mainly here in Babylon the Great, because other prophecies do have to be fulfilled before the war goes nuclear. You know, it can be very scary just thinking about what's going on, but as scary as it may be, through our faith in Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Shah, we rejoice in these days, because we know this is the Lord turning again our captivity, bringing us out of captivity. You know what I'm saying? Getting us ready for the kingdom of heaven, man. Okay, so we where we are, we look at everything and like we have to anticipate all the things that's going on, all the things that's prophesied to happen between now and then. You know, it's pretty scary thoughts, but we're rejoicing still, because we know that, for one, the Lord has proven his word to be faithful and true. Therefore, when it speaks about our salvation, hey, why not believe that? You know what I mean? Believe in that, man. Now, these things have been spoken of by the elders, beginning with the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, you know, and that starts with Elder Apostle Tahar. You know, he mentioned it in the video. He's been preaching these things for over 40 years. So the word has gone out, man. The word has gone out, and now the Lord is making good on his word. Now the Lord is proving his word to be faithful and true. Let's go to the book of Habakkuk. Give me a second. Habakkuk chapter 2. And I'm going to start at verse 2. It says, And the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision, and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Okay, it says, For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. So as these prophecies were once visions that were being spoken, now they're actually speaking for themselves. Now they're actually happening in real time. Okay. Now, 40 years ago, when Apostle Tahar was speaking, and right behind him Apostle Gabar, and behind him Apostle Rukar and Apostle Rumlab, when they was preaching this here, you probably couldn't have seen a World War III at that time. Things probably seemed kind of peaceful or whatever. I don't. But we're seeing in this day where these things are actually happening. Okay? Now, even when I came into the truth 6 years ago, and you made mention of a World War III, I didn't actually just see where it would begin or anything like that, but I believed, because I could see that everything else that was being taught, it's got to be, it's truth. It's written and it's happening. Even the prophecy of the MOTB, I could see it actually already being set up. The infrastructure for it was being set up. So it all made sense. You know what I mean? And I was fully persuaded. And I myself began to teach. And I taught about World War III, even though it just didn't seem, you didn't just actually see it right there. Now we're at a point to where, you're here. You're here. You know what I'm saying? Now we're actually living in the last few prophecies that have to take place before the kingdom of heaven is set up and before this kingdom is destroyed, man. There's no denying it. So get a couple of videos that I've been kind of looking at today, or just recently, and I want to start right here with WW3. Right here, is that? Right here.
This is WW3. We have some pretty big escalation here between the U.S. and Iran, and the threats and the talk of what's about to happen getting laid out there in the open, because Trump has said this whole time they're going in after their nuclear components, enriched uranium, but in this instance, this means boots on the ground. And as this article here starts off, it says it's the nuclear option. American Special Operations Forces are waiting in the wings to launch the most sophisticated operation in military history, and it will be to seize Iran's enriched uranium from heavily fortified nuclear sites. This is what they're stating. This is the more than likely scenario of what's about to happen, because Iran's whole goal here is to let us just pass time as they recover and rebuild, but also our strategic reserves are at tank bottoms, and they know this. They know that this is affecting the entire world.
And let me say it's 4:14 a.m. So call it all y'all by Shami Abashad at 144. But continuing on.
But the military guys surrounding this say that they think that the most likely way to get rid of Iran's nuclear material, at least what they currently have, is a military operation because negotiations aren't going anywhere at all. They say it's a deeply complex operation that would involve thousands of ground troops storming Iran's nuclear facilities. They would have to navigate booby traps because they're prepared, they're expecting this to happen. They would have to utilize construction crews, and they would have to maintain a large defensive blockade force around the site while trying to dig out some of the areas which they've already bombed, and nuclear material is said to be buried underneath of it.
And see, ultimately, this is gonna lead to a draft, because if they put boots on the ground like he stated, Iran is already prepared. They're anticipating that. Yeah, they already have booby traps laid out, landmines and different stuff like that there. And you honestly gonna send your troops in there to die. And you're gonna need more. This is why they're talking about a draft comes somewhere in November or December. Okay. And we all know that this devil is literally just playing into the hands of the Lord. The Lord is in control of everything he does. And we know that the Lord is shortening the days. So where he's saying December or something like that, the Lord can move up his time clock. Okay. So we're living in an any day now type scenario where these things could start happening. Okay, your Jacob's trouble, your all that there can start happening sooner than what you think. That you can't dismiss that option of things happening sooner than the dates that they're giving you. Okay, because we see how the Lord is speeding up the time, shortening the days, and this devil is. These people, they moving. They on the move with everything. I was watching Elder Yasharumba, I think yesterday, or the other day. He's getting ready to start the persecution. So they're setting the groundwork for that. They're going to start persecuting the prophets. They're going to start coming after us. And as it says in Matthew 24, this word shall be spoken, basically go out throughout the four corners of the earth, and then the end shall come. When this word is no longer being spoken, you got to know that everything is finna move quickly, faster and faster and faster. So we're at a point to where we count down months, no longer years. We're counting down months. This is how we close. Because this World War III is the war to end all wars. This is the war in which Yahweh Shai, our Lord and Savior, returns, and delivers us, man. So things are getting real interesting here.
They do not think that they can do what they did before. Remember, Trump came out and said, "Oh, we obliterated everything." That was a blatant lie. They did not. And they're admitting now that they don't think that they can even strike deep enough with their bunker busters to do the job to completely eliminate or wipe out what they're looking for. They say they're going to have to go in with small teams of special operators that will conduct the actual retrieval. They call this a highly dangerous process, and that it would be one of the most, if not the most, sophisticated operation or operations in military history. So this is what they're talking about doing, sending in SEAL team, different battalions, Army Rangers, and a whole slew more sophisticated than anything that's ever been seen. So they can go in and they can snatch up all this and they can get out of there. They say Pickaxe Mountain presents an easier option. That's probably why you've been hearing about it more in the news. The Isfahan and the Fordo sites are a little bit more complicated. You can see Fordo in the image in the middle, the security perimeter around it, and everything that's tied into it here. But this is what they're talking, and also South Par's oil field is a spot that I would watch as well. So anytime they're saying, oh, we're paused for talks, that's been bluffs this whole time. It's just been them recalibrating and getting ready for the next move. If you missed it, Israel says they're going to set this one out, which is garbage if you ask me. This is a war we should not be in, and Iran is vowing to strike back tit for tat. So for any power places we hit, any water plants, at some point this is going to get to where it hits home, America. The blowback is going to be felt, and it was all designed that way. And it looks like this is playing right into the hand of a reset, a massive global reset that
And that's exactly what it is, man. The Lord is bringing a total global reset. You know, as these people are trying to bring in their new world order, their own reset. Where Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai is bringing in his very own reset. You know, which is ultimately the kingdom of heaven. And so they're all playing into the hands of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. And ultimately, all these things have to happen, like he said, a reset. They have to crash this dollar. Okay? This is causing global economic crisis. Okay? Because all these different nations are on board with the NWO and the MOTB. What they don't agree on is, you know, they have their political differences, and everybody's trying to put themselves in a position to be in charge when the NWO comes. Because, hey, face it, America is incapable of it now. So you got the likes of China, you know, and Russia and other nations trying to position themselves, you know, to be the next Babylon the Great. I mean, when ultimately this is all the heathen raging. You know, let's try to get that. So Psalm 2 and 1, it says, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let's break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. And this is what's going on. The Lord got them in derision. That's why they're making moves that they don't even understand, you know. Just being honest. You know, that's why Trump is constantly lying, saying they did this, they did that, and you ain't did nothing, man. You've been over there getting your butts whooped since the beginning, man. Iran been tearing your butts up. Okay, because the Lord has all these different nations in derision, but these heathen are going to continue to rage and imagine these vain things such as the NWO. And the Lord is just going to bring it all to naught. You know what I'm saying? But we are at that time for them to actually try it. We are at that time, man. And this devil, things are getting heating up pretty quickly, man. This devil is getting ready to make his move, man. And don't think for a second that this, where we are in this war, is going to calm down. It's only going to continue to escalate. It's only going to continue to escalate. Prophecies are moving, okay? And we've been saying it. And very few people listen. But hey, have it your way.
Ties into China, the death of the dollar, and everything else. But it looks like that is what is planned here on this world stage. Join me for the live streams where I can talk about this in more detail. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, here on WW7.
And yes, that's absolutely what's planned, because, see, this whole war with Iran, you know, they closed the Strait of Hormuz down. As we're already seeing inflation and hyperinflation here in Babylon the Great and in a lot of other countries, the Strait of Hormuz being closed is causing economic crisis, you know, in a bunch of other countries. This is a global economic crisis. Okay, because everybody, once again, is on board with this MOTB. Okay, being set up, this whole system being set up. Okay, and the infrastructure has already been built. Now they need these certain crises, these red flag events, to just simply go ahead and put it into effect. And see, once they put it into effect, that's when this war is going to go nuclear. Okay? So you got to know that this is what they're working on. Okay? We're already pretty much out of oil. We're seeing the gas prices start to go up again. Hey, it's going to be a time real soon where you just going to wake up and it's going to be a whole different world out here. Okay? But they need that. They need the crisis. They need the uproars of the people. They need civil unrest. They need famine. Because this is what's going to get the people to actually, what's the word, accept that MOTB, which is that doggone RFID chip, man. That's the end goal. And once that's implemented and people are taking it, this war is going full-fledged nuclear, man. So it's a lot coming down the pipe, you know what I'm saying? But right now, this is just the rumors of wars, but we know what it leads to. These things have to happen in order for the other prophecies to happen. Jacob's trouble and the hour of temptation. The things that they're doing right now is leading up to Jacob's trouble and the hour of temptation. Okay? And the hour of temptation is when they make this mandatory. That MOTB. So once again, you got to understand how close we are. Because things can just escalate at any given time, you know what I mean? Now check this out as well, that I was looking at from Kim Iverson.
Can I apply for a loan with poor credit? Actually, yeah, you can. Just apply for a personal loan through this site right here. There's no need to go to a bank. No annoying forms, no hard checks, and none of that annoying bank stuff either like the other platforms.
Everybody has different interests.
And right quick, I'm going to say fair use under the Copyright Act of 1976. None of these videos are being used for monetary gain. This is only for educational purposes, okay? So let's start this over and let us speak a little bit.
Well, I thought we were dumb enough getting into this war against Iran, but apparently we're going to add China and Russia to the mix because we just can't have enough, apparently. We've got a lot of people in the administration making a lot of moves that clearly look like they are ramping up for a World War III with China and Russia involved. So it would be China, Russia, Iran, probably several other countries joining in on this against the United States and Israel, because I don't know who else is going to join in. I mean, this could be one way that the U.S. gets the West into the war with Iran. The West doesn't want to get into the war. The European countries don't want to get into the war, but they would get into the war against Russia.
So that basically, she's gonna tell you there. Pretty much now it's a lot of propaganda to get these other countries involved in this war. Okay? The Lord is stirring up the minds of all these different kings, you know what I'm saying, of these other nations, you know, to just go to war, man. And he said, the least of the flock shall draw them out. Now, the least of the flock, these small hats have already gotten America involved in a war that we don't need to be in. But it's Bible prophecy. And now they're going to use America to bring these other nations in. America is going to come up with all this different propaganda, you know what I'm saying, to cause these other nations to go to war as well.
And then who would get into the war against China? You know, Japan would join in on that, perhaps. Taiwan, of course. You maybe could get some other countries to go up against China. Maybe even India, if you bribe them enough. I'm not really sure how this all plays out, but it does seem like there is kind of this strategy building toward bringing these other countries into the war. And one thing that was really shocking, I don't know if you saw this, but, you know, Laura Loomer, the big, she's got president's ear, and she's often going after people, and she gets what she wants quite a bit. And she recently, this was an interesting twist, but she had recently gone to Kiev, went on a trip to Ukraine, and has since flipped her stance on the Ukraine-Russia war. So she was one of those, hey, you know, let's not demonize Russia, let's end the war, let's do a deal. And now she's full-blown for Ukraine, and she's one that's got the president's ear, and I think she often represents kind of the trend of where things are going. So I think it's important to watch what she's doing and what she's saying, because, like I said, she often gets what she wants, and if she's now saying, no, we have to support Ukraine, this is what's leading me to believe that we're now going to be adding the war against Russia and China in this. Here's Nikki Haley. You know, we're seeing the warm-up to this. Nikki Haley saying, it's important to remember that, yes, Iran struck our military bases and killed and injured many soldiers, but who is giving them the satellite imagery to do so? China and Russia. So we're going to start seeing a lot of the, let's just make a deal with Russia. You know, we kind of did Russia dirty, and that's why they ended up invading Ukraine, because we were saying we were going to expand NATO. We were doing all these things, and, you know, we're reasonable. We're willing to listen to them.
America been a bully, okay, all this time, and the hammer of the earth is now in a position to where they're seeing, you know, America's military ain't as strong as that used to be. So now they're trying to cause their allies to enter into this war with them. Okay, and where the allies, you know, NATO and the EU are kind of like, this is not our war. It shouldn't be your war. This between them tiny hats and whoever, you know, Iran or whatever. And so now, Babylon the Great, America has to come up with some kind of propaganda to get these other nations to join into this war that they don't want to be in. And it's going to work, because the Lord is going to put the spirit on all the kings of the nations to go to war. Okay? This is all Bible prophecy, and it's going to happen. You cannot get around it. You know what I mean? And regardless of how much you want to deny it, how many people decide to deny it, because they continue to think that Babylon is going to last forever, you're going to do another 250 years and all of that crap. No, it ain't happening. Okay? The Lord is bringing this to a close. Okay?
That whole crowd is going to flip. And they're going to flip toward, no, we have to support Ukraine, we have to support the war. And the reason is going to be, there's going to be a concerted effort from the think tanks who are going to put out millions and millions of dollars in order to convert all of these first, you know, hey, let's do a deal with Russia and end the war in Ukraine, converting them into no, Russia is the bad guy that the Democrats claimed Russia was all of this time, that they're just as bad as China and they're killing our American troops with their imagery, their weapons, their satellites, all of this, or helping. And that is going to try to get the United States to...
And ultimately, it's a whole snare for Babylon the Great, because the Babylon is getting these people involved in the war. And once they get involved, eventually, they're going to switch sides and they're going to take sides with Russia. And Russia is going to be a guard unto them and all these other nations. Okay? And so, yeah, China and Russia will eventually get involved, and you just see how they're really inching towards that. But Babylon is already at the cusp of losing its allies. Okay? Such as NATO and the EU. And different countries talking about leaving NATO. Okay? So, hey, it's going to be a very interesting rest of 2026 here, man. And I like the other Yashurumba said, I can see martial law happening this year. You know, all these things starting to gonna pop off this year. 2027 ain't gonna be, if we get to 2027, it ain't gonna be nothing like what you see today.
Ally, because that's really what, when when you're building a world war, how do you go about doing it? You've got to get everybody's interests lined up together. Maybe everybody has different interests, but you could at least line them up on the same goal, right? And so you could say to the European nations, okay, you don't want to join in on the war against Iran, fine, fair enough, but you do want to join in against Russia. And then the Europeans say, yeah, okay. And they say, now, but we don't want to go up against China because the Europeans don't want to do that. And they say, well, yeah, but Russia. And so they can play everybody's hand, try to get everybody.
And ultimately, all these nations are going to get tired of fighting wars for America and for Israel that they shouldn't have to fight. Okay, and they're going to turn on them. Matter of fact, let me see. That's prophecy. Because this whole propaganda that America, Revelation 17:16, start at verse 15, he says, and he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Okay, so these 10 horns is speaking of NATO and the EU, that whole alliance that's been the dominant alliance over the earth for some years now. It was created to combat, Russia when it was the former USSR. Okay, and now Russia's coming back to that old Soviet spirit. You know what I'm saying? And they almost untouchable. And they got allies like China, which is pretty, these like, hey, this is smoke that America don't want. That's why they're trying to get these other countries and stuff involved, because Russia and China have financial, economic interests with Iran. Okay? So them going to war with Iran and doing all this here, eventually is going to bring Russia and China in the war. So now they're trying to convince their allies before time to join into the war for that purpose. And it's not going to work, man. It's not going to work.
Play everybody's hand, try to get everybody to feel like, okay, yeah, we have to do this.
Never sue the other driver after a car accident. There's a better way. You could get paid a way bigger check without having to go to court or pay expensive upfront legal.
Yeah, we have to do this. Here's another news report saying, oh no, U.S. officials fear China and Russia are helping Iran just building up that narrative against those two countries.
Also this morning, new reports raising concerns about Iran's growing cooperation with Russia and China after the deadly attack on American forces stationed in Jordan. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that both countries likely provided Iran with intelligence and targeted support ahead of that attack. The report states Iran appears to be using the same advanced high-speed maneuverable missiles it deployed during its attacks on Israel back in 2024.
I think one of the interesting things, and I've just seen kind of breaking news on this, was the precision in which they were able to strike sensitive targets within Jordan. And the reporting is indicating that perhaps China or Russia was feeding them targeting information. Now, we need to get to the bottom of that, particularly if we're talking about China, on the back of the news that the president just broke and declassified about them stealing over 200 million voter files from the United States and obviously interfering in our election where they were trying to influence through media campaigns or social media people's perceptions and how they were ultimately going to vote. China is our adversary.
So, right.
I mean, and you kind of got to make that make sense. You know it's a propaganda. Okay? These people don't do nothing but lie. Okay? They're trying to fight a war because this man is closing in. You know, Esau Edom, so-called white man, is pretty much closing in on world dominance, man. Okay? He's trying to create a pseudo birthright. And all this is revolved around you Israelites, man. That's why we're calling you into repentance so you can be saved. That's why we just read in Joel chapter 3. You know what I'm saying? That the Lord is gathering all these nations, you know what I'm saying, to war, you know, to bring us out of captivity. And only an elect few, you know, 1/3 of the Israelites here in Babylon are gonna be saved. You know, so we want to be at that number, man. And we see we're just that close. We're just that close.
Trump did last week start to say China meddled in the election in 2020 in order to make Trump lose. And a lot of Republicans are really mad. They're gobbling this up. So these are the same people that would not believe Russiagate, right? They were like, that's a conspiracy theory to say that Russia helped Trump win, made it to where Hillary Clinton would lose. That's a conspiracy theory. But China does it, and no, that's real. Don't you understand? So you got the...
So you see how these Edomites keep switching up their stories. You know, they got to come up, find a new bully, a new person to blame for everything that's going on, that they're to blame for everything that they're doing, you know, to get other people on their side. You know what I'm saying? Because these Edomites want war ultimately. Okay, and like I said, everybody's on board with this MOTB, you know, being made mandatory, you know, with this whole New World Order thing. Okay? So all this here is, the world is a stage, man. The world is a stage. And ultimately, this is the Lord's movie, and we're all characters in it. So you got to make sure that we're playing our roles like to the foot, that we don't go off script. Meaning we don't fall out of this truth. We don't stop praying. We don't stop fasting. We don't stop. We stick to the script, man. And we keep our faith in Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah, because it's about to get real ugly out here. It's about to get real ugly, and the time is 4:44. I missed the 4:41, but call the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah. 4:44 means mercy, and that's what we need. We're gonna need mercy from Yahweh Shah. Okay? From Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah. We're gonna need that mercy and protection. You know what I mean? So now ain't the time for your faith to waver or none of that there. Okay? It's getting deadly serious out here. Now ain't the time play games, okay? As a lot of people continue to play games because they refuse to believe truth, okay? And they're going to be caught off guard, okay?
Democrats saying Russia did it. You've got the Republicans saying China did it. Different elections, different outcomes. And then the question to Trump has been, well, then if China didn't want you to be president, why are you president right now? I mean, if they had the ability to do that, then what's going on with you here? And then the response seems to be, well, because they figured that they wanted to maybe meddle in the 2020 election. They ultimately didn't, is kind of what we're getting from this kind of convoluted argument. But because they decided that it didn't actually, there was no political interest in them for them either way. That either way there was no difference. Well, wait a minute, that's what Russia had said all along too. That either way there was no difference. So China says either way there's no difference. And guess what? Most Americans say either way there's no difference. So why would anybody meddle in our elections when there's literally no difference? Either way you go. But here's Trump alleging China meddled in our elections, which, by the way, voter records are public. Anybody could get them.
If you're experiencing ongoing knee pain, join a study where you will receive study-related knee surgery from...
Get them.
The documents cover 5 major areas of concern. First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening.
I mean, so you get the point. You see what these devils are up to, man. Y'all see what these devils are up to. They're hey, we here, man. Simple as that. We here. I'm going to go back to the scriptures and go ahead and close this out. None of these scriptures are new. Zephaniah chapter 3. And I will start off at verse 8. It says, "Therefore wait ye upon me, said Yahweh, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy." And that's where we at, man. The Lord is gathering the nations all together for war, and he's going to judge all the nations. Okay? And before that, he going to come save his elect, those that don't take that MOTB, man. So, this is where we are. I'm going to close it out in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. And I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to go all the way down to verse 8. It says, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak." And that's why this word is speaking. It's no longer keeping silent. And this is the main point. Verse 8, it says, "A time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace, and we are in the time of war, and it's not going to let up. It's only going to escalate. It's only going to heat up. Okay, because we are in that time, and this is the war to end all wars. Okay, so stay in repentance, repent and stay in repentance, pray and stay prayed up. Okay, keep faith. Okay, we almost out of here, brothers and sisters. I'm gonna end it right there, giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shad, Bahasham, Rukakwadash. Until the next time, Shalom.